the tie on.
Yeah, we usually wear orange up on the set on Fridays because it's the day before the game. But
well,
we have another camera you can't see that we're going around with.
Got you.
He's trying to make me look good, and that's going to take a long time. So
whenever you're ready, because
okay.
we're
all right. Yeah, because we'll be editing this up anyway. So
sure.
First, out of the gate, what are you and House Republicans doing to fight inflation, and what would you do if your party takes over? Because obviously, it's easy to say that looks terrible. It is terrible. We all know it's terrible. But what are you doing as a party, and what do you plan to do if you take control?
Well, thank you for that question. On an individual level, for years I have served on the House Appropriations Committee. And three key subcommittees, but one, of course, is energy and water. So I've worked very hard with people to try to make sure that America's energy abundance is available for the market. So I have continued to work towards that. Unfortunately, this administration has thwarted that with fossil fuels, specifically natural gas and oil, in their approach to try to go all green. I'm for all of the above energy. So having said that, our party is going to win in November in the House, probably in the Senate. And then what I think we need to do is sit down with this administration and say, enough is enough. Let's get back to common sense economic and energy policies, which will reap America's abundance that we have all across the United States, and get more supply out there in the market, and just have good common sense energy policies that will help the American people.
Is there someone to blame for the higher gas prices? Who and why? What was done or wasn't done that caused that?
Sure. Under the previous administration, we were reaping the abundance. America was actually going out and a net exporter of petroleum. Think about that. The United States has oil fields that dwarf the size of the Saudi oil fields. We were going out and for the first time actually exporting oil under a law that I actually voted to help pass. Now we're in a situation where this administration from the inception has gone out and worked to thwart domestic energy production. It started with the Keystone Pipeline, which Joe Biden basically killed, and that is killed forever. That's just not going to come back. But we've seen them take actions that have been counter and putting us into a situation where if a crisis arose, we would be vulnerable. Guess what? The crisis did arise. So it rests with Biden, Schumer, and Pelosi and their minions who basically wanted to thwart domestic energy production. What are we going to do? We're going to come roaring back, make sure that we go out and get America's abundance out there and get it done for the American people.
And from your position, I have one more question about this, and I'll move on.
Sure.
Just killing the XL pipeline, it wasn't pushing any oil through at that time. What else? What was done that actually did production slow down? Did the amount of production slow down? Was it oil leases? What are some of the specific things that happened that actually can be tied to higher prices?
Well, Biden actually killed the pipeline. It's finished, it's over, and it's not coming back. But I'm glad you asked me that question. I spoke with financiers the other day, and they told me that they are being disincentivized to fund energy projects in America, whether it's oil or natural gas. They are being told, don't do it, and being disincentivized to do it. What we've got to do is realize we've got this abundance to go out there and get it done. It's an all of the above failure on the part of the Biden-Harris administration. Sadly, Schumer and Pelosi have chimed in and done that. I want to get back to common sense energy policies where I can use my seat on the Appropriations Committee, specifically the Energy and Water Subcommittee, to make sure whether it's nuclear, whether it's oil, whether it's natural gas, that we go out and make these energy policies, energy available to the American people, to the free market, so that we can get more out there. And what will happen? The price will drop.
Let's jump on another thing. Military aid in Ukraine. Where do you stand on that? And will you continue to support it?
I did vote for it. I continue to support it. And I'll tell you why. We can't let Russia win in Ukraine. I've spent time in Kyiv. I've spoken with members of the Ukrainian parliament. The world should and overwhelmingly has condemned the Russian invasion into Ukraine. It's wrong. There is no way to justify it. It's caused death. It's caused destruction. It's caused infrastructure damage. And from a self-serving position as an American, Ukraine produces a lot of agriculture. It produces a lot of key manufacturing gases that the world needs. We could actually see famines now because of the disruption in that chain. Again, commodities, whether it's agricultural or petroleum, are out there. When you thwart that production, when you destroy that production in a big country like Ukraine, what the Russians have done is they will drive all these other commodity prices up. That's bad not only for Ukraine, but it's best for the worst for the rest of the world, where we actually see potentials for famine in poorer countries in Africa that are dependent on these key resources.
Let's talk about the federal government for a moment. If Republicans are in control, if there are some budget cuts to save money, how will you make sure that that doesn't impact East Tennessee? I mean, of course, we have things like the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, and we have other federally supported programs here that a lot of people depend on, a lot of companies depend on.
Well, in the new Congress, I am going to be what we affectionately call a cardinal. What that means is a subcommittee chairman on appropriations. So I will be one of the 12 key people in Congress responsible for discretionary spending. To answer your question, I think we need to be wise fiscally. Ultimately, we're going to probably have to address the real problem in the room, which is mandatory spending. There's not an appetite to do that yet. But as we go through the appropriation bills, I think we're going to have to make absolutely certain that we spend wisely, we hold the administration accountable, and more importantly, that they spend the money in the way that Congress directs, not the way that they feel in their radical woke endeavors to spend the money.
If the Biden administration, as soon as they came in, said, hey, we're not going to continue to build the wall, is that something that gets restarted if you take control? And do you see that as a major part in controlling right now the undocumented surge that we are seeing, which I don't think anyone on any side of the aisle is denying that a lot of people are coming in? Will you address that after the election?
It's another great question. I'm the ranking member right now, highest Republican on Homeland Security appropriations. So I actually did fund the wall. Joe Biden signed the bill, the appropriation bill, actually funding the wall. Unfortunately, he's not built it. So the administration is not following the law that came through the House and the Senate and that he signed. So what do we need to do? We need to go back to square one, congressional oversight. We have that in the Constitution. We need to bring administration officials before us and hold them accountable. Funding the wall is part of it. Technology is another part of it. But at every step of the turn, the Biden administration, whether it was doing away with the buffer policy in Mexico, stay in Mexico and things like that, they have thwarted us. And what they have done is they've created and incentivized illegal immigration into this country by the millions. What does that mean? It means crime. It means fentanyl. It means people on the terror watch list who should have never been allowed to get in have gotten in. Some we've apprehended. We have got to make absolutely certain that we stand up for a strong southern border, an American border that is secure. This administration has not done that. We need to hold their feet to the fire.
In November 2020, you tweeted that you stood with former President Trump saying, quote, what we are seeing is fraud, and it was referencing to elections. Do you have confidence with these midterms coming up that these elections will be fair and the right ballots got out there, the right ballots will be counted?
In Tennessee, I do. Tennessee has the most solid election system. Why? Because Republicans and Democrats sit at the table, work with Trey Hargett. So Tennessee has no problems. Get out and vote in Tennessee. You'll have one vote counted one time, counted the right way. I'm confident of that. In the rest of the country, I'm not so sure. We're going to have to make sure that we watch the process, make sure that people are allowed to vote who are legally able to vote, but I want it counted one time. And I want to make absolutely certain that we can start to restore election integrity in the thoughts and minds and hearts of all American citizens. I don't think we're there yet, but we will watch that very carefully and let's see how it plays out.
Okay. You're one other question about maybe supporting the path to government shutdown. Is that something that could happen, should happen, needs to happen? If
I do not support government shutdowns, and let me explain where we are in that process. I'm glad that you asked. The fiscal year for fiscal 2023 began October 1st of this year. We did a continuing resolution that was passed by the House, the Senate, and signed by the President, moving that process to about December the 14th or 16th. At that time, we are going to have to decide whether or not we are going to pass a budget for fiscal 2023. If we do not, there'll be another continuing resolution, probably into the new year. A government shutdown would not help this country in any way, shape, or form. Our dear friends in Oak Ridge, where we have $7.3 billion of annual federal investment, would clearly be hurt by that. I think the American people would be hurt by that. So the question will be, not so much about a government shutdown, whether or not we actually get a budget passed in December for fiscal 23 so that we can begin working on fiscal 24 early next year. That's yet to be seen.
All right. Well, Congressman, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your answering our questions, and good luck with everything down the road.
Thank you so much. Wish you the best.
Okay. Thank you.
All righty.
Right.
Appreciate it.
And
thank you.
Make sure you get your drink at Waggles.
There you go. I want some eggnog.
Yeah, some eggnog.
But